with a non-public session. So we'll be going to our first scheduled appointment, which is Steve Lieber, John Brannigan of Affinity Lighting, and Tim Nunes of Unitil.
They are here.
And so we're just going to be discussing the LED streetlight project via Zoom. And we also have Cindy Kennerson, our finance officer. Kevin, yet again, I'll turn it over to you since you're a point man on this.
Actually, I'm going to turn it over to Unitil, because I guess the question is, we understand the process, we saw the numbers. Where our finance director had some concerns was we want to make sure everything is spelled out in a contract form so that there's no surprises down the road. So I'm asking Unitil if they're in agreement with the numbers that Affinity has put forward towards us.
Can you be specific to the numbers that you're referencing?
Yes. It was, Unitil's gonna rebate $16,946. And we were gonna, I guess, finance the $22,000, or we're still trying to understand that one. But are you agreeing that the interest-free annual payment and all that stuff?
Yeah, obviously this is a rather complex equation. There are multiple documents that need to transact between Unitil and the town of Kingston. There are aspects of the project that are going to be financed. There's going to be parts of the project that Unitil is just going to have put on the bill at no interest. It's quite complex, so I'm willing to go through any part of it that you'd like to go through.
We understand it's complex. We're looking for it to be in a contract form so that we can move forward with this.
Tim, I don't know if you remember me, we worked together on the Exeter Chamber, a couple of beer festivals as well, if I remember correctly. And I know Unitil has an excellent reputation, and as do you. But our concern really is about making sure that we get the types of rebates that have been promised. It's my understanding that in the past there have been some rebates that didn't come forward, and the town is concerned about making sure that we have a contract with you as Unitil and Affinity to do this project well and efficiently and with the appropriate rebates that we expect, so that, yeah, we're going to pay $22,000 or $700 an arm for the lights, but do we want to ensure that we have the removal costs spelled out clearly, the rebate costs spelled out clearly, the annual interest-free payments to Unitil spelled out clearly, so that there's no misunderstanding going down the road with the town's obligations, with Unitil's obligations, and with Affinity's obligations.
I agree. That's my goal as well. I don't know at what point we want to jump into the math, but if I were to look at this from my perspective, there's the initial project cost from Affinity to convert the streetlights to LEDs. That's one cost center. Another cost center is the what we call the net book value of the existing streetlights, the undepreciated value, whatever works best. I call it the net book value. That's another cost center. What we refer to as make-ready work, which are those power mast arms that will facilitate the new LED lights. There's another $22,000 or so with that, and then add those all up, essentially subtract out the rebate amount from Unitil, and then the remaining amount is going to be put on the town's account in a couple of various methods. One is known as the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is affectionately known as RGGI, RGGI. So the RGGI money can be used for customers to for lack of a better term, I'll call it copay. So if this project cost is $33,000 or easy math, $30,000, Unitil's paying half of that in the rebate. The other half would be on the town. So that's your copay. That copay can be put on your bill at 0% courtesy of the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, or RGGI funding. So that's one source. The copay is going to be paid for by RGGI, and then the remaining net book value and the $22,000 for the power mast arm brackets, those will be placed on the bill at 0% interest, and that is just Unitil enabling the project to move forward. So I don't know if that summarized it somewhat.
So if I could ask Cindy to jump in, what is Cindy looking for?
Cindy?
Well, just, a contract that spells that out so that we know that Unitil will pay these expenditures and then bill us monthly so we can budget properly, because we don't have money in the budget to pay any of this up front.
Yeah, so of the documents that need to be executed between the town and Unitil, one is what we call our service agreement. So that highlights sort of the net book value, the proposed fixtures, the rates for the new fixtures, and in this one particular case, it will be incorporating the $22,000 for the mast arms. So that will all be in what I'll call the service agreement. So all those costs and monies are captured there. For the financing aspect of it, the copay, which is $16,000, somewhere in that vicinity, there are I call them loan documents. It's a 0% on-bill financing. So we call it the OBF, for on-bill financing. There's for all intent and purpose, a loan document for the 0% on-bill financing for the customer copay. And then there's lastly the rebate application itself requires a signature from the town of Kingston, enabling it to go forward. So there's three documents that sort of encapsulate this effort in its entirety.
Does that include signatures from Affinity as well? Or is that a separate contract between the town of Kingston and Affinity?
I didn't hear that fully. Sorry.
Is there a separate contract for Kingston, for Affinity? And then Cindy, we
I
have
apologize.
another
Once again, I didn't hear.
Kingston to the other two?
So, hey, this is John Brannigan, JB. So, yeah, it would be a separate contract with Affinity. So, Tim did an awesome job of spelling out and explaining sort of the Unitil portion of it. And then the agreement with Affinity is made with us. And as Tim explained, as you guys go through the signature process and you get the terms and condition sheets, and again, I apologize, the specific language that Unitil has on that, it will show from our proposal their portion that they're comfortable signing to and committing to. And of course, we stand behind our portion. So you'll have the two sort of broken up, and you'll be able to see everything, a contract with us and a contract agreement with them for the process and for the on-bill. Did that answer your question, Susan?
Cindy, are we all set with what?
Well, I just want to make sure that Unitil will agree to pay Affinity, so the town isn't responsible for paying Affinity directly.
Yeah, that part I don't know that we've hammered out yet. I would have to see. JB, we've done projects similar to that. Are you referencing, Cindy, the rebate going to Affinity? How?
No, yeah, well,
Talking about,
that would be part of what would happen, I would assume. But also, it's laid out so that the town gets the 0% financing for all of the costs. So somebody is paying Affinity on our behalf, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of what we need to see as well, because Affinity's asking us for money, but the way this was presented to everyone, it showed that the town would pay this off after the project was done with 0% financing.
Perhaps I
So-
can interject a little bit, Cindy. Traditionally on these projects, as Tim laid out, there is a rebate, which is obviously paid, committed to from Unitil to the town. And with the OBF or the on-bill financing, for the copay, which is the other 50% of the actual project cost, separate from the mast arms work.
Right.
Part of the original 33,893. Traditionally, the town receives those funds. We are normally compensated directly from the town, but as the project closes and we turn in all the paperwork, which usually happens pretty quickly, then the town receives, I'm going to say 2 checks. I don't know if it's 2 checks or 1 check, but they receive 2 disbursements. One is the disbursement of the rebate, and one is the disbursement of the copay, which is the other 50% that Unitil is agreeing to put on your bill. So normally there's a transaction between us and the town, and then you are basically paid back the cost of our portion of the project, half of which is done as a rebate, and the other half of which is done as giving you your copay back because they're financing it 0% over time.
And this would be spelled out in the documents that Tim was talking about from Unitil?
Well, Unitil's documents, I think, Tim, I personally haven't read Unitil's documents. We've done, many of these projects already, but I think Unitil's documents do, as part of execution of those docs, Cindy, say, yes, you're committed to be paid a rebate that is signed off by Unitil, and you're committed, Unitil is committing to finance your copay, which is the other 50% of your project. So is that what you're looking for, Cindy?
Well, yes. I was under the impression that Unitil would pay Affinity directly, but as long as it's in writing that we will get the money from Unitil, but we can't pay Affinity until we have that in writing from Unitil.
Right, and in
They're
essence, you are,
agreeing to the rebate and agreeing to financing the rest of it.
in essence, you're, to use the term, out of pocket of the project cost of 33,893 until the project's over, and then you are reimbursed through that agreement with Unitil for those 2 portions, which equal the total that you paid us.
Okay, but at this point,
That
we
makes-
have no agreements from Unitil.
Correct.
That's right. And it's typically, you're at that tipping point of the project. We've seen this with Stratum, Hampton, Plastow, to name a few, in Unitil territory. We do the same with Maine and Central Maine Power. You're at that tipping point in the project where you kind of have to commit to the project to pay down that net book value, that undepreciated asset value, to enter into the agreement part where Unitil and the town are going to agree, okay, you've had this many lights for this long, that's what you're paying for. One of the things I like about Unitil, and I'm not going to pick on the other utilities, I do live in Maine, I'll pick on CMP a little bit. They make you pay your net book value without regard to what we find in our audit. And in the case of Unitil, they're much more really open and transparent about it. If I work with Jamie Page, one of Tim's colleagues, to say, hey, we were looking for, I'm making up the numbers for easy, we're looking for 100 lights. The good news is we found all 100 maybe, but we actually found 114, and then actually maybe we only found 98, and then we reconcile all that. At the end of it, Unitil works with you to only close out, to buy out the lights that are proper. If we find a light that you never were paying for, they don't go after you or add to the number. They just agree to update the records. It's a really great system. So yeah, Cindy, you're at that point where the agreement paperwork from Tim absolutely will spell out everything that you're looking for. And if at any point along the way that the numbers or something doesn't feel right, you're not signing anything that's a strong commitment either. If we needed to review it together as a group, that's an easy thing to have happen. But Tim generally will put together to say, yep, based on Unitil's portion of it, the mast arms, by the way, congratulations. I think I joked the last time we were all on the Zoom together, but Stratum, no, none of these power brackets. Plastow had one and Hampton had one, literally. So you guys to have 35 is pretty unique, and I don't see that many in communities in general. So this expense, you have your net book. All towns have that. This mast arm expense is a little special. Again, Unitil's awesome. If we go forward with this agreement, we'll provide the inventory, the stock. I confirmed that again today with the regional work center, Scott Wade, who's a great guy from Unitil. We provide that when they take the old equipment down and put the new arms up, they'll hang our light at the same time. So that's part of that whole process. So our part that we quote you includes all of the labor, all of the disposal, and everything on the streetlight project that we're capable of doing, plus the 32 lights, 35 lights that Unitil will hang. And then Unitil will do their portion, and it's absolutely all spelled together in that contract for the on-bill recovery. You'll see it all spread out.
If I can cut in a second, I think the select board is happy with the numbers. We have a great relationship with Unitil, and we look forward to having a good relationship with Affinity. You know, everyone speaks highly of you. We're okay with the numbers at this point. What our concerns are is with our finance director, because she just wants assurances that everything is going to be as it's said. So we're, you know, what's the phrase I want to use as a good Republican? Trust but verify.
Absolutely.
We just want to make sure that everything is spelled out. But other than that, everything that you have presented to us, I don't think anyone on this board has any issues with that. We're just asking for our finance director to oversee it and make sure everything everyone's promising is on paper.
So who gets the ball rolling?
I would say if Mr. Nunes and Steve Lieber can get together with Cindy to get all the paperwork, and once she looks at us and says, I got everything and I'm comfortable with it, we will sign off on it. Does that work for everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds good here too.
Okay, so we'll connect offline, Tim, with JB also and Cindy, just to make sure. It sounds like now the next step would be for Unitil to draft the documents for your review of those three documents that Tim was talking about, the two critical pieces to the initial normal installation part, which is the rebate application, which I think is filed but needs to get to you, Cindy, to look at and verify and sign, saying, yes, this is the number we've talked about and agree. And then the second piece is all about the net book value and copay financing.
Yep.
Is that correct, Tim?
Yeah, and I did some, back of the envelope numbers. It would appear if we took all of the expenses and divide them out over their 60-month perspective period, then looked at what the energy savings, not in energy, but in dollars, what the dollars are that the town looks to have a net positive cash flow from basically day one. It's going to take 5 years to pay off, but you guys will have a positive cash flow from the energy savings.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Great.
Appreciate Unitil working with us on this. I know we're a little odd town with those street light, the brackets, so we appreciate you at least offering to finance those zero. But if while you're crunching the numbers and you find a way to be able to pass that cost on to the rebate, because we can't put those LED lights without those, feel free to add those in there as part of the rebate. No comment? Crickets.
Crickets, yeah.
A little challenging hearing you.
I think I was able to stitch that together. So you were looking to see if on the 35 units that we're going to be providing the equipment only, and Unitil is going to be doing the labor and the mast as part of the tariff doing that work. If if we haven't explored if there was an incentive available for those
Yeah.
in some way.
Correct.
There may not be. New Hampshire saves, so as Tim said, so the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, RGGI, it's a really good proof of sort of a carbon tax, if you will. I know those can be controversial, working to provide some funding back into the region. That's where the money comes from. But there is a New Hampshire Saves, they sometimes offer a new construction incentive, but it usually doesn't apply for unmetered or poles. You have to kind of tie it back to a meter to prove the savings. I think we can ask the question for you, but I'd just cue it up to say don't get disappointed if it doesn't fit into that bucket. But if it does, we'll absolutely ask to see if we can further the incentive on that.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. And it's good you took your time on this. It's a great project. It's going to save both dollars and energy. So good project. You're at that turning point now. It sounds like we're there. We'll get you some paperwork and make sure everybody's comfortable and look forward to working with you all.
All right, I think you all have Cindy's contact information, so.
Thank you.
I think so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cindy.
everybody.
We'll all catch up soon with you. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up, we have Laura Lee Mather from Geo Insight regarding the MS4 general permit, as well as Rich St. Clair.
And Brian Martin.
Yeah, you were supposed to print them.
Oh, I didn't get them. Did I have them in an email?
Yeah, I sent them last week.
I'm gonna have to print some things out quick. Sorry.
That's all right. I emailed this morning too.
I did.
No, I didn't send it to the actual.
I saw
attachments.
something to Rich, but I didn't see any attachments.
No, they weren't attached this time.
printed
Okay.
a copy.
You did print a copy?
Should've checked before now. I apologize.
It's okay. We'll get Rich to speak slowly.
We're trying to get one of these printed up for you guys.
Are we in compliance, and how much is this gonna cost us?
Big bucks.
Should I be printing 5 of these, I guess?
Trying to think that. And I gave it to you as PDF so that if you wanted to put it up on the Zoom.
Yeah, I know.
So this isn't the first time we're going to do this. Geo Insights represented the town since 2004 when the MS4 permitting process all started. This is basically the stormwater, EPA stormwater stuff that I've been talking about for 15 years. We're basically in the middle of the second phase. Actually, we started year 3 of a 5-year process. 5-year process is probably going to be 8 to 10 years at least, maybe 15, like the last one. If you don't know, all the stormwater, all the major bodies of water in the town of Kingston are polluted. There isn't a single body of water that isn't considered polluted by the EPA. Kingston Lake, Country Pond, Powwow. We have 2 major, water in Kingston goes one of 2 ways. It either the northern end of Kingston dumps basically into Great Bay through the Little River, Exeter River, Lamprey River into Great Bay, or the Powwow River Basin. The water runs basically towards Kingston Lake, and Country Pond, down Powwow, and into the Merrimack. Basically, we're 2 huge watersheds that Kingston is basically not quite 50-50. We're divided by. Both of those are impacted waters. We all read about the problems with the water in Great Bay and the shellfish that you can't clam there anymore and you can't recreate there like we used to because of the polluted waters. Some of those waters come from Kingston. The MS4 permit is basically for us to do things, to start coming in compliance, to make things better, so we don't continue to make things worse. I'm not gonna tell you I'm a big fan of this, because it's an awful lot of money that the taxpayer's gonna have to spend, but that's the way it is. Laura Lee has taken over the project. Who was the person that you took over for? Jenny. Jenny was in here about 2 or 3 years ago with Mike Penny, basically. But where the Board of Selectmen keeps changing, a lot of you people weren't here then. She's got a printout. Basically, if we were in the 21st century here, we'd have a projector here and we could do a presentation. But she's got a handout for you to go along, basically explain to you what the program is. We've got a budget here for this year, what it's gonna take to get caught up, because there were some things that didn't get done last year that need to get caught up on. My budget number needs to move from $14,000 to $44,000 in stormwater. And this is all so that you folks have some idea of what we're talking about.
I have no clue, just letting you know, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yep.
And I'm assuming there's no money from anybody else, but we're just mandated to do it,
Exactly. Yep.
typical.
Yep. And like I said, this is not new news. This is 2004. It's been talked about at the Budget Committee and Selectmen's meetings for at least 15 years. And I think my comment was, for the last 5 years, that stormwater is going to be a budget that's over $100,000 a year. It's coming. It's going to happen.
So there's no
And
more
that-
waivers?
And that's today's.
Should we be looking at municipal water as opposed to groundwater?
No, we have a much better system. Open ditches and swales where basically the water's filtered through the ground. If you had a municipal water system, I can't tell you how many millions of dollars Exeter has had to spend to bring themselves into compliance. It's probably tens of millions of dollars that the town of Exeter's had to spend because they did have stormwater system that was mixed with their sewer system. So then they had to separate, so there might be 2 pipes running side by side. One takes stormwater, the other one takes the poopy water. We used to mix that together. And then we just dump it in the Exeter River and it ended up downstream. Now, they have treatment plants, they have double treatment plants, they've had to increase the size. In fact, they're working on a multi-million-dollar project for their stormwater now. I think it's around $10 million.
Their wastewater treatment just came in, it was supposed to be 50 and it's at 68 million, I think, right
68
now.
million. So yeah, we don't want one of those. We don't want one of those. But there are things that we're going to have to do. Part of it is public education. I mean, for the first 15 years or 14 years, I did it all. And 2 or 3 years ago, I said to the selectmen, this is your baby, because I don't control the planning board, I don't control the conservation, I don't control what the Board of Selectmen does, I don't control, but I used to put my name on it. Well, when you're not in compliance, the EPA sends you a nice letter and says you're not in compliance, and the fine starts today, and it's $236,000 a day fine. That's 236 with 3 zeros on the end per day. So they can make it real serious for you. They can wake you up real fast. How do I know that? Because I kind of slipped one year, and Geo's Insight had to come in and bail me out because it was a substantial fine because there was some things I didn't do about 10 years ago. I got myself out of that. I'm not, I don't want you to be in that predicament here next year or the year after. So I'm kind of dragging this on, hoping that Susan gets those printouts, but
Keep going.
that's what's going on. It's
So do we have a 5-year plan?
we developed a 5-year, we had the first one was done in 2004, which was supposed to be a 5-year plan. That went till 2018?
17.
2018.
Yeah, 2017.
So that was 13 years, a 5-year plan that they dragged out for 13 years. And there were different things that we had to do. Part of it was public education, outreach, developing a stormwater. They want us to do an ordinance, but we did a regulation. Those things were all done between myself and Geo Insight and the planning board and the board of selectmen. That was phase one. Phase one ended in 17, now we got another phase. We had another NOI that we did. Notice of intent, what we plan to do to satisfy the APA for the next 5-year plan, which again will go on. That was signed off on by this board.
So for 2021, we need to budget $44,000.
Yep.
And then we give that 44,000 to Geo Insight, and they tell us how we do it.
They're gonna work with us. There's a lot of things that we need to do, which is all in this presentation.
Is the 44,000 it?
No, it'll be,
That's just your fees as a company.
that's what it's gonna cost this year. Next year it's gonna be another $30,000 or $40,000. But that's in the
I'm in
bag.
the wrong business.
So is there a map of what we're actually responsible for?
Do I have a map?
A map, or, I mean, what is the town responsible for? Because there's state roads that have stormwater management. There are individual developments that have stormwater management, so what is the town
We are
responsible?
responsible for all those things.
What's that?
We are responsible for all those things.
Even the state stuff?
Yeah, we're responsible for private development, because we're supposed to be monitoring all those things. So that's one of those things the government put on our, put on our head. If you allow a shopping center to be built in Kingston in the last 15, 18 years, there was a stormwater plan that was developed. The town of Kingston is supposed to go out there, or at least make sure every year that that stormwater system that was put in 15, 18 years ago is operating and being maintained.
So does that come under your department, Rich?
No, that has never been done. We are not in compliance there. That is something that we should be charging a fee, somehow, collecting a fee from some of these businesses that we go out and collect, that we look.
Which the planning board has had that conversation many times over the last 7 or 8 years.
And this was also viewed as a role for a code enforcement officer, or someone who would go out and make sure that we wouldn't be doing the inspections, the business would be charged with having it inspected, and we would just
Yep.
ensure that the
So
certifications
it's a whole new
were on
department,
file.
basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah, yep. So, yeah, Rich, you've been involved over the years, so it's not, shouldn't be that new to you. But that's where we are. Anyways, you can fight the EPA, you can ignore it. I can tell you you're gonna lose. Not many people. You can
They're one of those unfunded mandates, it's okay. I know how that
You
works.
can have your town lawyer come in and if he wants to come in and give me or give the town specific, hard, fact stuff that he's gonna be willing to defend in court against the EPA, and you wanna pay your lawyers to fight, be my guest, but I still think you're gonna lose.
Well, and you're going to probably spend, if not more, as much money on the lawyers.
What's that?
You're going to end up spending as much money on the lawyers as, moving the project, so.
He lives in town though, so it's like
Oh.
rejuvenating the economy.
This is Laura Lee Mather from Geo Insight. She is taken over for Jenny, who was here a couple years ago with Mike Penny. Mike Penny's still with the company. Again, they've been working with me and with the town since 2004 on this. There you go. Take it away.
There you go. Do you want me to remove my mask so I can?
We're all friends here.
Speak? Okay. It's just easier for everybody to hear, right?
We can hear you better, I think.
I'm sorry?
We'll be able to hear you better.
Yeah, I think so too.
Closer.
It's so weird. So I mean, I've not ever done a slideshow without a slideshow. So we'll just we can kind of flip through these. And thank you, Rich, again, for all that history. That's very helpful. And just so we can step through some of these, but, you know, Rich asked me to put together kind of like a MS4 101 to kind of give everybody here, as he explained, we know you guys are all new, comparatively for the MS4 program, where some of us don't know anything about the MS4 program or what it entails or what it's about, and so he asked me to kind of put a little show and tell together for you guys just to get you up to speed a little bit on what the program is. This isn't a sale for my services, this is really just what the permit's about. So obviously in stormwater pollution basics we have stormwater, it hits the ground, it runs across the surface, some of it infiltrates in, and it hits things and picks up dirty stuff and carries it into any of the catch basins, the storm systems, swales, and eventually ends up at what we'll call receiving waters, which are basically, you know, the streams and brooks and lakes and ponds that the town has many, many of. Common pollutants in stormwater include oil and grease, fertilizers and pesticides, trash from construction sites, illicit discharges, which we'll get into in a little bit, pet waste, leaking septic systems, and yard waste. So as Rich pointed out, in 1972 they have the Clean Water Act. They started regulating specific point sources, and those are things like where we'd have they call it the NIPDES permit, where if you have an industrial site that you're discharging stormwater to, you usually have to get an individual permit, and they started kind of pulling all that stuff together. So it started out with industrial sites and bigger and larger projects to kind of move through that. And if anyone has a question, just interrupt me, I'm fine with it. So this is kind of the timeline. The next page is kind of the timeline for the federal regulation and how we kind of work through this. So they had the Clean Water Act. In 1990, they started the phase 1, which was large cities and anything that had a combined sewer overflow, that's a CSO, which is what you were talking about in Exeter, which is the combined sewer overflow. And in 1999, they started bringing in towns and municipal entities, because a lot of municipalities and towns, you know, started having the curb and gutter systems, which you also mentioned that you guys don't have as much of, and pretty soon, you know, I can still remember, we were just talking outside, I still remember my dad dumping all his changed motor oil in the swamp behind our house. And
Don't own up to that.
well, a long time ago, it was a very long time ago, but you know, we all can remember a time when people just dumped stuff right in the catch basins and they thought it was perfectly fine. So an MS4 is a municipal separate storm sewer system, meaning that it's not combined with a regular sewer system. And so that's where they get the 4 S's. It's called the MS4 program. The idea of the MS4 permit is to reduce the discharge of pollutants, to proactively protect water quality, and meet the Clean Water Act. So again, the water flows, you know, across the land, picks up pollutants, goes into the catch basins, or just even some of the open swales and ditches, and gets carried into the receiving waters. So similar to the other timeline, Kingston started coverage in 2003. We say it was 2004 for your first NOI. And that permit actually expired in 2008, and then as Rich explained, it didn't really get renewed by the EPA. Took a good, you know, 9 years for them to renew the permit. So in 2017, they reissued the permit as the phase 2.
And that's where I got in trouble, because it expired, but it really didn't expire. So I thought when it's expired, I didn't have to do anymore.
Stuff.
The EPA straightened me out on that fact.
Consider yourself re-educated.
I was re-educated, indoctrinated.
So the 2017 permit has a lot more requirements than the 2003 permit did. Basically what they're trying to do is they're basically giving all the towns and the phase 2 people time to ramp up and get to. They have a certain goal that they have in vision where they want everyone to be managing their stormwater and how they want to be able to manage
What's
it.
the date?
What's the date for
Yeah,
their goal?
what's the timeline?
It's,
We
you
make
know,
it up?
we don't make it up. No, I'm just saying like the EPA has an ultimate goal and they're using these permits to step through it to get to that point, right? right? So it's going to go from the 2003 wasn't as stringent and it didn't have as many requirements. This phase 2, you know, this next permit that we're in now has more requirements, and then when this one expires and they finally write a new one, it's going to be even more, you know, specific to being able to manage the stormwater. So these are some of the different, I won't read them to you, bore you with the stuff. I've also given you guys like a list of the different acronyms that you hear people talk about when they talk about the MS4. Again, I'm not gonna read them to you, but there's a lot of fun acronyms that you have to learn. So one of the things they talk about in an MS4 is considered a point source, because they're going to regulate what comes out of the pipe or what comes to a point and enters into a receiving water. A point source is a discrete place where you can trace the pollutants from that source back to some location, because it's actually funneled into one place. You'll also hear people talk about a non-point source, which is actually the thrust of most water quality issues. Non-point source is just the dirty water that runs over and enters into the point source. So from an MS4 perspective, the EPA can only regulate the point source, and so that's why they're looking at the MS4 in terms of the sewer systems. How does Kingston end up needing an MS4 permit? They need an MS4 permit by this thing called an urbanized area that the Census Bureau dictates what determines an urbanized area. And the EPA, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, it's basically an area that has a densely settled area core that's, and it doesn't have anything to do with it being a municipality, it's just a census block and they are combined together. So if you have the 1,000 people per square mile, or any part that has 50,000 people as a whole, not in a town, but just as a group of census blocks that meet these requirements, it becomes part of an urbanized area. And the EPA says if you have an urbanized area, they make dirty water, and that's where your pollution is coming from. So it's a mechanism for them to be able to identify who falls into the MS4 category. I'm being a little bit less complicated. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I'm trying to simplify it slightly. So the next page is an urbanized area of Kingston. This is the EPA map that demonstrates where your MS4 area is. Not the entire town is covered by the permit. Just the parts that are, well, mine is hatched, because mine's pink, but, so just the hatched areas fall under the permit. But if you, as you can see, that's a pretty decent amount of the area of the town. It's not just like one corner or up a strip or something. It's including a lot of these ponds and streams that you have.
That's one thing that's changed between the first permit and the second permit. The first permit, basically, I was young and dumb, and we included the whole town as part of the catchment area, because I thought sooner or later the whole town would be. Then, when realizing the cost of bringing things into compliance, this second phase, we actually reduced the number of catch basins and outfalls and things like that we need to monitor based on the mapping. So we did reduce our coverage area substantially in the last 3 years.
Do we have to do another overlay for the town for those catchment area, like we had, like the aquifer zone? Do we also need to include this so that when someone goes before the planning board, if they're in the stormwater zone, that could mean some fees that would be generated because they're located in a specific area? You see where I'm going with that? If it's not the whole town and it's certain areas around the ponds and the lakes, then shouldn't we put another layer in terms of topography of what anything that's built in those areas get another fee to help us mitigate the cost for the stormwater waste disposal?
So I think that map actually does exist at Rockingham Planning. I think back when we did all the catch basin mapping and whatnot, there is a map. The guy's name was Robert. He used to do the mapping at Rockingham Planning. I believe that map exists, but I'll check on it. If not, then yes.
Then I have the map. I mean, I have all of it in GIS.
The point is that we're not gonna give you a call every time someone wants to come into Kingston.
Of course
So
not.
if you have a
It's,
I'm
it would
not trying to
be,
be fresh or anything, but.
it's definitely something that you guys would think of as a planning tool, where you would use it as being able to locate that. I guess one caveat I would say to doing that is, and I have other towns that I work with on the MS4 permit compliance. So one of the things I talk to you about them is trying to balance some of your areas and say, like from a regulation standpoint, maybe you do apply all of the regulations across the entire town. Maybe you don't separate the regulation part of it, but you do, because that's not gonna cost you all that much more money to just say like, well, we're not gonna we're only gonna regulate this part of town this way, and we're gonna regulate this part of town that way.
I thought I heard you say it's not the whole town.
It isn't the whole town, but the planning board, if you were coming in, no matter what part of town is, you're gonna look at the same stormwater regulation, you're gonna comply with it, whether you're in the zone or not.
Well, you're not gonna have two different sets of regulations, is what I'm saying. I mean, generally, that's not something you would do.
Every planning board application has to adhere to this.
Okay, okay, so that's, it's moved.
But his point, to Rich's point, what he was saying is like, there are other steps that have to take place as part of the permit, like, we have to go out and screen all of the outfalls. We have to go and sample all of the outfalls that go into impaired waters. So you don't do the whole town for that because that's expensive, right? So you're only gonna do the ones that fall within your urbanized area.
So do we have a list of things we need to do in the order in which we need to do it in?
Sure do.
And that's your job?
It is my job if you give it to me, so.
You're not leaving us any option here.
We've been
Just
talking
saying.
7 or 8 years about how to charge people for this maintenance over the years.
Yeah.
At least for the first 10 years on a major development, and we've never done anything.
Yeah.
And that's a fallacy of the town. The town should have done this years ago. We've dragged our feet, and
Well, I mean, the town can certainly do all of this on their
Well, we
own
can't even-
dime, but.
You got a development like Diamond Oaks that, you know, the planning board said put in swales for exactly this, and then the developer went and didn't even put the swales in. Now he's trying to backpedal and say, I don't need the swales because people don't like them, and yada, yada, yada.
But what should happen is he should have some additional fee to maintain those for the, you know, at least, I think we said 10 years.
it's forever, but, you know.
I know, but, you know, we're kind of assuming tax dollars are gonna be part of it, but
Yep.
they should pay for their development for so many years.
Okay.
So MS4 infrastructure, just a quick thing, it's storm drains, it's catch basins, it's the conveyance systems, which are swales, and if you had curb and gutter, it would be the gutter. It's the outfalls, the pipes where it comes out of, or the ends of the swales where you dump it into the receiving waters. It also includes treatment facilities and stormwater ponds. So if you had hydro separators, you know, for grit, or if you had retention ponds or detention ponds, or you know, any kind of metering or treatment that you have for your stormwater, which is good, but those are all considered part of your MS4 infrastructure that the town is responsible for. So a big word that they use, or a word, but a phrase that they use all the time, and I'm sure you've heard before, is a BMP, which is a best management practice. The EPA's permit is all about BMPs. It's about how many BMPs can the town do to help mitigate and to reduce the amount of pollution that's going into the receiving waters. Some BMPs are structural, some BMPs are non-structural. Right now, I feel like the permit is really more focused on the non-structural ones, which is good to some degree because that is more done from a regulatory and a public education perspective, as opposed to saying like the town must now go install hydro separators at every single manhole or junction, or go around putting the treatment ponds everywhere. I mean, there's some degree of that later on in the permit where they do want to see a few structural BMPs, but right now I would say that it's mostly focused on the non-structural things.
So I guess that was my question with the map, is what is, I mean, there are things that have gone through the planning board over the past, 15 years that have had to have these SWIP plans, and what is the town responsible for? I mean, overall, they're responsible for everything, but what is, like the highway department, what catch basins are we responsible for maintaining and
Just the ones that are actually in the right-of-way. and in the, if there's a detention pond, there's, in a subdivision, then there would be an easement that the town, that's actually in the town's easement. We're responsible for maintaining that detention pond or retention pond, which there are a lot of. There are a lot of open swales. Ken Briggs, when he was town engineer, he believed in, because we're on the coastal plain and most of Kingston is sandy gravel, most of the developments were done with open swales and long, broad, so that most of the water basically soaks into the ground.
Do we have an inventory of that?
Yep, that's one of the things I've had to do over the years, is go out and find all the catch basins and cross pipes, culverts, and that's a lot of that stuff's been mapped. Some of it's,
Is there an inventory that's not in your head?
no, it actually exists on a map.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, and GIS and things like that.
So doesn't that basically mean like in a neighborhood like mine, all the catch basins you maintain, but the swell in my front yard I maintain? Right?
The swale, that's in the town right away, so that's actually my responsibility. Because I own the first 18 feet of your front lawn.
Right, no, I knew that, but I thought I had to maintain a swell and
You have to
did.
maintain the culvert in your driveway, but the swale is my responsibility. Yep. So yeah, that's what happened the first basically 10 years. There's a lot of things that had to happen, and they've happened. They might not be the best information, and we actually have to go back and look at some of that information that was done, because my interpretation back then has changed. What's an outfall? As you get educated in what other towns are doing, and there's coalitions of folks that get together and discuss it and work with the EPA and work with the state DES and work with our engineers, and so some of that information needs to be changed, and that's part of this budget, is to look at some of those things and correct the mistakes I made in the first 10 years.
Well, as the permit has changed, so
Yeah.
has people's interpretations of it as well, so I wouldn't say they were wrong. Anything that's gonna improve stormwater is always right, so. So the biggest thrust of the permit is these things called the 6 minimum control measures. They're listed here. I kind of give you a little bit more information about each one of them in the next few pages. So one is public education. There's a prescribed set of plan that you have to do in order to meet the permit. You have to send out, it doesn't have to be mailers. There's many different ways to educate the public, but you're required to do certain things at certain times of the year to be able to educate the public. Susan has a new matrix that I've given her to be able to help with that. When you have impaired waters within the town, that adds a level of complexity to that. So there's a basis of just simple education that has to be done, but then when you have impaired waters, it adds more into that program. So it gets a little bit confusing because it's in all different places in the permit. So to try to understand that, it's easier to try to put it into a matrix. And so that's something this is something, the public education part of it, that one thing we try to do with our other towns is try to find as many things for that town to be able to do on their own, that they don't have to pay us to do, because they're strictly more administrative. There's nothing technical about, me sending brochures out to people in the community. And that's certainly not a valuable use of your money, is to pay me to do those things. So,
And it's not just brochures.
we could do
There's
a lot.
all kinds of information. We have a town TV channel. There's videos that you can get from the EPA and post right on your TV channel or on your webpage. Sites you can click up. How to properly maintain a compost pile. Foolish things like that. But that's all public education, so that when the rain hits that compost pile, where do you put it? Do you put it right next to the stream, or do you put it on the other side of your property away from the stream? So when the rain, it doesn't wash all the nutrients in the stream, which pollutes the lakes and the ponds and whatnot. Those are all public information things that we're responsible for doing.
So we get little gold stars for every
Yeah,
we run, or?
Now, you get,
I'm serious, how is this weighted?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
how much
sure.
public education are we responsible to provide?
A lot. Pet waste, fertilizer.
That's the new public affairs official.
Yard waste.
Yeah.
So I don't know who remembers Woodsy Owl, but I do. That shows how old I am. And so another piece of it is again, more public education, but this is public participation. So MCM2 talks about being able to give opportunities to people to be able to help with the stormwater. They have cleanup programs. One of the pieces you're supposed to be able to do is you're supposed to allow the public to be able to comment on your stormwater management plan. And every year when you update it, and every year you're supposed to talk about your BMPs that you're doing within the town, such as education, and maybe catch basin cleaning, and give people an opportunity to talk about how to improve it. So an MCM3 is the illicit discharge program, and the whole point of this MCM is to find people that are being naughty, basically. And I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but an illicit discharge is basically anything that is getting added to your stormwater system that is not stormwater. That's my dad dumping oil into the swamp. So, but in this case with the MS4, again, we're only regulating technically the point source, which is coming out of the ends of the pipes, the ends of the swales where it's entering the water system. So part of this program is to test those. If you have flow, you test them and look for specific pollutants. If you find those pollutants, you follow that upstream to the next junction, like maybe it's a manhole, and then 2 catch basins go off to that, and then you have 2 catch basins that go off to that. It's the, he told 2 friends and they told 2 friends kind of thing, and you kind of chase that information all the way back till you find the naughty person. And then you have to stop that within 60 days. Once you know that there's an illicit discharge, you have to stop that. Another part of this program is being able to have some towns have a hotline, where people can call in anonymously and say, hey, I saw my neighbor doing this, and then you have to go out and check it out and see what's going on.
which we do have, and which we have head calls.
I think every town has that, implicitly anyway. There's plenty of people that call up and rant at their neighbors out. So it's not just that, but I mean it's other things as well. People that are doing illegal dumping near wetlands and things like that. So MCM4 is about managing construction site runoff. This is where it gets into your regulations, where you have to make changes to the regulations if needed, that do things that I think a lot of New Hampshire towns are already doing. They're already telling their developers, you need to put silt fence up. You have to protect the water quality. You can't just have yucky water flowing off site into your neighbor's yard and things like that. So there are specific requirements for regulations under the stormwater, under the construction site. The MCM5 for post-construction is very similar, but it talks more about the design end in terms of permanent stormwater management, in terms of treatment, infiltration, and groundwater recharge, protecting wells, protecting groundwater so that we aren't polluting our wells if that's something that, like Kingston has a lot of wells and no public water. And I'm just jumping through these quickly, so I mean you obviously have a copy, you can read through it. And of course, if you have questions later on, feel free to email me. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. MCM6 is good housekeeping. Don't ask other people to do stuff you aren't willing to do. So there's a whole list of things that the town for municipal operations is required to implement. A lot of these things are all about written procedures that the town has to do. Like, it's not just Rich knows how to clean a catch basin. It's Rich puts it in writing how to clean a catch basin. There has to be written procedures so that
We don't have any of that.
there's a legacy for all those things. And there's a lot of templates for those things, so that a lot of it is already written, and it's pretty easy to kind of go through and do some of those. But they have to be read by the town and made sure that that this is actually how they do things, because once you put it out to the EPA, that they expect you to do what you say you're going to do. So in Kingston, there's a lot of impaired waters, and the impaired waters are, there's a report that DES does and sends to EPA for approval every 2 years. Right now, we're working on the approved impaired waters list, which is the 303D and 305B list, and that's for 2018. They're due out, the 220 one is due to EPA. I think I just was in a webinar with DES that said that they were about to submit that, and so the EPA takes a little bit of time to work through their stuff, so we might get that approved in 2022. Kingston has a lot of TMDLs. Basically, I think the graphic is kind of basically sums up what the TMDL point of it is a total maximum daily load. That's how much pollution is going into each water body. And the whole point of a TMDL plan that is developed by the state and again approved by EPA. Basically it's saying right now you have X amount of load going into your water body. It has an assimilative amount. Only you put in 100 milligrams per liter of X. The pond can only assimilate 50. You need to reduce it by 50 plus 10%. It's like a big calculation, but basically they want you to reduce what you're putting into the pond by 80%. The pollutants of concern in Kingston specifically, we have bacteria, statewide TMDLs for 4 beaches. You have a water quality limited waters for 1 beach. You have 2 ponds, actually you have 3 ponds with phosphorus TMDLs, but only 2 of them are in the MS4 area. And you have 1 each of phosphorus and nitrogen impairments, 1 river, pond, and the water quality limited waters. The chloride is another pollutant of concern in the EPA in the permit, but you don't have any impaired chloride. Yay, no impaired chloride. We don't have to write a chloride. This is just a map that I put together for you guys that show the MS4 area and the impaired waters in the town. It gives it a little bit cleaner. Mine's in color, so it makes a little more sense. And we talked about the permit through year 4. So you gave them a copy of the proposal as well?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the last pages of the proposal, I don't think it's the very last page, but one of, or I guess it's in the middle, is something that looks like this. I don't know if it's kind of small. I can't read it from here, but but basically what I'm talking about here is a fiscal year for a town is from January to December, and the permit year is from July to June. So when we're talking about permit year for the permit, we're talking about something that started in July and ends in June. So right now we are in permit year 3, but permit year 4 will start in 2021. So you have requirements that are specific to each permit year that you have to meet. There's requirements right up for 15 years through the permit, and they have specific ones that are due on specific years. So it's difficult for towns to budget these things because of the fact that it's split between your fiscal years. So I just want to point that out. So when I say that we're in year 3, but we have permitting through year 4, it's because next year, at the end of December, when you're still in 2021, you're supposed to be in permit 4.
How has
permit year
COVID
4.
issues impacted year 3? I mean, we're almost done with 2020.
Well, right, but the permit goes, year 3 goes until June of 2020.
Yeah, with June, and here we are in September, almost October.
Yep.
We've had 6 months of COVID, and now we got 3 months to catch up. Not good.
No, it's a little, I know you can't read the next one. It's kind of on purpose. This is all the stuff that needs to get done in the next 2 years. So this is just a list of the years 1 through 4. But Susan has a big PDF color one too, if you wanted to see more of it. So, and it's 2 pages long. How exciting is that? And then the last part is just kind of bringing into focus what can happen when you don't do what you're supposed to do. I haven't known anyone to get fined yet for the new permit that started in 2017, but these are the fines that are listed in the permit that could actually potentially take place.
Our friends one town south of us, Plasto, got in trouble for the first
That was
permit.
included.
It was, okay, lots of money. They spent a lot of money getting themselves out of trouble, and they're still,
So bottom line is you need $30,000 more in your budget line for next year's.
and I've already got it in there, it's going to be submitted to you, but
And then,
part of that is for the budget, Rich, but part of it is the board has to realize what's going on.
Right.
And there's things that your road agent and your next road agent can't do for you.
right,
That we need to look at this as the big picture.
I wrote a statement out. As part of that money, are we gonna get some guidance on how to pass
Oh, I see.
cost on to applicants?
These are two of the big list.
You know what I mean?
So,
We've been talking for years about building in something to,
Maybe that would be impact fees,
well,
a separate?
There's lots of different ideas on funding for stormwater. There's even things called stormwater utilities where you actually do it just like you would do like a municipal water system. I mean, we can certainly add that to the proposal in terms of funding. That's not part of the permit compliance. How you pay for that is not part of your permit compliance, right? So if the town wants to be super magnanimous, you can just do it all because you're nice, right? But the EPA doesn't really care how you pay for it. So that's not part of your permit compliance. The proposal that we gave you is for permit
no, I'm
compliance.
asking if you're,
I can definitely work with you guys to try to figure that out, but that's a different, it's not in the proposal that we have now, because we're focused, well, I mean, you guys have a small budget that you're asking to expand. So I tried very hard in the proposal to give you something that really only focused on the things that you have to do to not get in, to stay into compliance, right? The other part of it is more administrative, but we certainly don't mind helping you guys, find a way through that process. I'm not, but the proposal is really just aimed at, keeping you guys in compliance with your permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be more a warrant article type discussion, whether there's an additional impact fee added on, or we're gonna need to pass the savings, the government savings, saving us from ourselves, on to everybody.
No, it's an unfunded mandate.
Call it whatever you will. It's,
I don't know.
I mean, this isn't something we can just eat every year.
Because
We have to do it.
we have to do it, that's what I'm saying, it can't
It's
be a
not
warrant.
an option here, so let's.
I understand, but it has to be a warrant article on how we pay for it, so whether it is set up
Oh,
as
I
an
gotcha, I
impact
gotcha.
fee,
Fine.
like, if you're gonna build in town, you're gonna pay X amount for the MS4 fee.
Yeah, Gotcha.
I can certainly send you guidance on different, there's certainly plenty of documents on funding, there's no end to different ways that you could probably do it and people have come up with.
because I mean, this has been talked about for, well, I haven't been chairman of the planning board for 6 years. And we were talking about it years before that, so it's probably been talked about for 10 years and nothing's happened yet.
Sure. Yeah, it's just that they're two they're two separate issues. The compliance with the permit is one issue, to keep you from getting fined.
Right.
And then the other part
We
is,
need to do all the work we need to do.
yeah, you do, yeah, unfortunately.
So, with your experience in fines and things like that, I mean, not that I'm looking to do the wrong thing from the start, but might as well know what kind of trouble you're gonna get into. What is, I mean, these fines, I'm assuming, are spurred by something that gets the EPA's attention?
Not always. I mean, they have started doing audits, just random audits. So they've done at least 2 towns on the new permit. 2 towns they did, Salem and Merrimack. They've audited both of them, and it's been a pretty harrowing experience, I think, for both of them, which are both, for the most part, in pretty good compliance. They've been right along with I go to the coalition meetings. I see them very frequently at the coalition meetings. And I know that they're doing their best, but they, like every other town, have limited resources, and there's just so much they can do. Even if money wasn't an issue, there's a time issue with, staff has other things to do. They can't always just be 100% working on stormwater all the time. So I don't think they've levied any fines at this point. I think they're still waiting for their final audit report from the EPA. They didn't indicate that the towns gave a discussion about the audits at the last coalition meeting, and they didn't feel like they were going to get fined. They felt it was more, like, let's just help you guys do a little bit better, and these are the things that we're interested in.
Re-educate you.
But then they go home to the EPA world, and who knows what they decide to do once they're there. So they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't fined anybody in New Hampshire yet. But I think if they came to do an audit, or if they didn't like the way your annual report looked, the answers that were on your annual report, for whatever reason, whether it be random or not, if they came and found you to be willfully negligent, I don't think that they would be very happy about it. There's a difference between just not being able to do everything and doing the best you can with the limited resources that all towns have, versus just willfully not doing what you're supposed to do. Do you understand what I mean?
Right. And what would your role in an audit like that be?
Well, I know that the other towns, I wasn't involved in these towns that had the audit, but they did end up having to have their town council there. They ended up having to have all of their consultants that worked on all the different pieces. Some of the towns have multiple consultants for different parts of it. And they had to have all their staff that's involved in it. And they were tied up for probably the better part of a week, I think, with the meetings that the EPA put them through. So even then, it was, they felt it was random. They weren't specifically chosen because they did anything wrong. They still had to pay all those people to be there, not doing anything else except just listening to.
So they had the plan that you're proposing here, and it met all the criteria, and they were randomly, luckily selected.
That's the impression that everyone seems to have. So. But again, if you were to get randomly selected, it's always better to at least be looking like you're trying to do what you're supposed to do, as opposed to deciding not to do it.
And then, are PFOAs anything that they monitor in this?
Yeah.
The good news is we have a PFAS expert in our midst in the Manchester office. She's pretty well versed in that stuff. So
Say the name again?
Nikki Delude. I'm trying to remember how. I'm blanking on her last. She just joined us recently in the last few months. So Nikki Delude. She used to work for Sanborn Head, I think. So we definitely have some expertise in PFAS if that were ever to come up. Right now, I wouldn't worry about it in terms of the MS4 power.
So I guess I'll ask the question, right now, we currently have a contract with you? Or we don't, we just pay you, how's that?
So we had one for last year, which basically we're writing them. So we don't, right now, they're not on the contract.
We have,
But it's the year 3
I think
and
we have
4.
one, we have the dry weather screening we're still doing for that contract.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
Under our new purchase contract deal, do we have to put this out to bid? Since it's over,
that's how you don't do it.
huh?
That's how you don't do it.
I mean, whether we wanna do it or not, are we not bound to do it?
Do you put your town engineer up to bid?
Hmm?
Do you put your town engineer up to bid?
No, but he's an hourly fee.
I mean, town lawyer?
Yes, we do. It's coming up for renewal.
well, this
So it's the
right,
same.
well, the proposal is time and materials, so.
I mean, the question is, do we have to put that one out to bid? Are we bound to? I'm asking a question, I'm not saying we have to.
Yeah.
I'm saying, do we have to?
Well, I think that's a matter we gotta research for sure, just to make sure that we're in compliance with our own rules. Definitely, we need to make sure that that's the case, but I get where Rich is going.
Yeah, and we would do a time and materials. What we've given you is a budget. You know, this is what we think it's gonna take to do the work. So, I mean, if you wanna, it's not a lump sum that you're not, the town's not committed to paying us the full amount if we didn't do all of that work.
I'm just thinking of numerous contracts that we've entered into that we didn't put out to bid recently, based on environmental things that came up, and there were specific people who were,
Deemed experts to us.
well, it just timeliness of it, you know, they were the people that we could get
I
a
mean,
hold of.
I wasn't involved in the writing of that, that happened pre-me, so I don't know exactly the deal on it. I mean, I would hope we don't have to, but.
We can look into that. Any other questions?
No, thank you. I know we've been talking about this for a while, but we knew sooner or later it was gonna creep back up, and it's better to keep us out of trouble. And I can only imagine we haven't done that much, but I'm sure we're leaps and bounds over some other towns around us. And they're all in the same net, because we're tied with Boston, not with Concord, correct?
Yeah, Concord doesn't actually have an MS4.
Yeah, because they don't have population.
You know, southern part of Kingston, well, guess what, that's also Plasto and Newton.
Well, it also includes Massachusetts,
Right.
because it's not bound by, you know, political borders.
And the other side
How is
of
that
town.
legal?
What's that?
How is that legal?
Well, I mean, in terms of the how they determine the urbanized area.
It's based on the census.
It's not the permit, Massachusetts has a different permit than New Hampshire has, but the urbanized area is determined, it doesn't look, it's just the density of an area as a whole.
Yours isn't to question why, the outreach of the federal
It's
government.
but to do or die.
It's extremely exciting reading on the census website, if you would.
I always find it fascinating when questionable legal activities always seem to have new boundaries drawn for them, give it planning commissions or, you know, things like this that, yeah, anyway.
Well, I guess you could argue that it's similar to a watershed, right?
But it's not scientifically backed on watersheds, it's based on population, which really has nothing to do, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Anything
No, I
else,
mean,
Trevor?
we could argue the finer points of that.
No, and I know you didn't write it, I'm not trying to say that you're behind all this or anything, please don't take it that way, I just.
All right, well, thank you for your
Well,
time.
thank you very
I
much, that
appreciate
was good information, not just for this board, but for the people at home, and having nice things costs money. So-
Having good water costs money, unfortunately. And I've given Susan my card. Like I said, if you go through it again, the presentation, you have any questions or something that makes sense, feel free to email me or call me. I'm available. So.
Thank you for coming on Monday night.
No,
Thank
no
you.
worries. I live right down the street, so.
You live in Kingston, is that what you're trying to say?
No, I live in Danville.
Close.
But I live on the Kingston side. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The only other question I had for the board, kind of waiting for that PO for Pike to get signed so I can get on the schedule.
It's right here, and Rich, if you could explain real quick, because I walked in at 6:30, the question was, why is this for 400,000? And I said the bid went out,
I think Kevin.
the people bid on 50,000 tons,
5,000.
5,000 tons, and it was so you compare an apples to apples. The actual thing, we won't know until it's done, but if you could explain that.
Yep, I think the total number of tons of material was, you caught me off guard here, but 5,000, say 5,200 tons with the highest number. It wasn't 5,000, so there's another 200 tons of mix there. At $60, $70 a ton, there's another $14,000, $15,000. You don't know if you're gonna be exactly at that number, because if I figure the road at like 1 3/4 inches of pavement and, you know, you start dragging, you gotta put another load on there, because the tonnage is gonna be what the tonnage is. All you really care about, really, is the price per ton, and the price for the grinding. We determined that Pike was a lower bid. There's 400,000, that, when you do the calculation, the extrapolation that I use, I think the number was it 378,000? But I put the PO in for 400,000, there's $420,000 in available to pave. I'm not gonna spend all $400,000 if I don't have to, but I'm not gonna do I'm not gonna do a partial job and not have quality work. If I've gotta put a little bit extra material on a road, because it's hard to figure, in a road just like this, exactly how many tons are going on each road. So generally, I'm pretty close, but there's some fudge factor in there.
While we're on that topic, I was asked if the landing for Bluebird Lane will be done in addition to Little River Road.
See, there you go. There's another $1,200.
Where it used to go across 125,
Yeah,
instead of taking the dirt by the Sleep Institute going straight.
yeah, the old road, sure.
It was pointed out to me by the residents there that the trucks usually park there and then we'll destroy whatever little bit of asphalt is left, so.
Sure.
That's funny. Oh my God.
Anything else for me tonight?
I thought you were gonna be here on, Solar Hills.
Solar Hills.
My favorite.
Did you go out with it?
Cease and desist and the road going through.
Yeah, Dawn and I went out there, looked, and there's been subsequent information. I don't know if you went out there again. I'll hang around, sure. Yeah.
Do you have all, you went out there with them, is there anything?
Yeah, Rich and I went out. The information I got today, when they came in, was that they were working up on the Conant property.
Rich, you don't have to hang out.
So,
if you-
we went out there and we didn't see any activity. Dawn and I went out there. The excavator hasn't moved in 6 months. The dump truck hasn't moved in 6 months.
No path cut into the woods in the back.
Well, I just heard about that today at 9, 10 o'clock this morning. I did not go out there this afternoon. No.
You still burn waste oil?
Yep.
Diesel?
Yeah, we'll take diesel.
And, okay, because I emptied an outdoor tank that is like 90% diesel and about 10% oil, but it'll burn that fine, right? At about 100 gallons.
Well, it doesn't have any water in it.
No water.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask one question? Sorry, that, this came up at the office about, Oak Street versus Birch Street. The person at 4 Oak is now 4 Birch, and they wanna know why.
I didn't change any street signs.
It said there's a new street sign, that's what they came in about, so it shouldn't have been changed.
Isn't that?
No roads have been changed to my knowledge, and no new street signs have been put up down there to my knowledge, so.
Okay, I guess she's having trouble with deliveries because there's a new street sign.
We did replace the sign, it was missing.
Okay, good, we'll check it out, check it out
Okay.
tomorrow.
Yeah, because right now there's like 2.
Facing the wrong way.
That's probably what it is, because
Yeah,
there's already
please
an
check
oak
it out,
already
that'd be
birch.
great.
That's what puzzled me.
All right, there you go. Thank you, call me if you need me.
Do you want this copy back?
That's your copy, yeah. Thank you, Rich.
Thanks.
Okay,
See you, Brian.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
stunning education in federal government bureaucracy.
Oh, my God.
Next up, we have Matt Costello. Good, how are you?
I'm here to see if I could purchase some town land.
Sorry, what?
I'm here to see if I could purchase some town land.
Yeah, so, we did see that you had put a warrant article in, it was approved, but then the land wasn't purchased. So what we did find upon further research was that the selectmen do have the authority to sell property without, having to go to warrant article. However, what do we have to have, a hearing?
2 hearings.
2 public hearings.
And it has to be reviewed by planning and conservation. So it's a process.
So the town voted for me to buy this property. Obviously, I went through a divorce, and after that, obviously comes a financial hardship. So basically, this is no good.
The problem is, you know, after a certain amount of time, whatever the agreed purchase price was, you know, land from 15 years ago isn't worth what land is now.
Right.
So that has to be taken into account. There's a whole different set of neighbors, there's a whole different set of variables involved here. So it has to be noticed to the public so that if someone else wants that property or has a contention on the property, the town needs to be aware of that before we disperse of it.
There's another, the selectmen voted a thing there for, especially for Great Pond Park, for butter owners to purchase land, town-owned land for $1 to the abutters. And the reason for that is to keep, all the lots in there are small, to expand your yards, so obviously other people can't come in and build houses like they're doing.
In Great Pond, and I don't know the specifics of the lot that you're buying, but I know in Great Pond Park, there are certain parcels that the town either got through taxes.
Right,
Or they were paper streets
they're all
or-
taken from taxes.
Yeah, but those are extremely small lots.
Right.
And what street are you on?
First Street.
Okay, so you are in Great Pond Park.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do we have to do? What does Mr. Costello have to do first? I mean, we gotta start from scratch basically without having to go to the town. Cause it's been more than 20 years, 15, 20 years since you originally got permission, is that correct?
What's that?
It's
No,
been a long time since this first
Well,
came up, right?
2006.
2006,
So 14
that's
years ago.
14 years.
So what we're gonna need is we need to notify the abutters. So there's gonna be a fee associated with that we have to do a certified letter that goes to all your abutters, notifying them of public notice. And once that goes out, we'll schedule 2 public hearings. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I'm just listening.
Okay.
Well, we gotta figure out a date. Mr. Costello has to provide a list of all the abutters.
Now, I'm also interested in buying 2 other lots that abut me. Same thing, small little lots. 87 and 92.
We don't
Pretty
have a process in place.
The other thing is, I think we should probably let our appraiser know to go out there and at least do a
Yeah, that's the
appraisal.
first thing that's gonna have to take place before we have any public meetings, is there's an appraiser that's gonna have to go out there and do that assessment. So, I mean, if there's multiple properties, what you can do is just,
Well, the
Yeah.
thing is, I'm the only abutter to the properties besides, that's it, really, besides the town.
Do you surround the property?
No, there's a street.
But the person across the street's in a butter too.
Across the street to them, but, I didn't know that.
And what about the other sides?
That's, the other side, I own.
Okay,
And
so you
just-
surrounded other than
Yeah, and
across
then
the
pretty
street?
much, I took pictures of the property, it's a hill of all ledge. It's really useless property. But I noticed like there's like,
It's
down the street
useless.
from me, there's a lot that's only 40 by 80 and they're allowing them to build a house there. So that's what made me say, you know what, it's like, secure this before, actually I know there's an excavator in my backyard. You know what I mean? Which,
I would say follow up with Susan, so that we can know what lots you're looking at. Then we can get the appraiser out there, then we can notify abutters.
No, but we need a process in place.
Yeah.
so, and that's the other side of this, is if you're buying multiple pieces, or if you would like to buy multiple pieces of property and the town would like to sell them. So you're talking about one piece that the town had already agreed 14
Right.
years ago to sell you. Now you're adding other pieces of property on
yeah,
here.
well, like there's 2 other small pieces that abut my property.
Right, but more than likely, this is gonna require a survey as well. Especially down there, because it's very blurred where the lines are for some people. So the recommendation I would give to you is to contact Susan tomorrow. Before we're out of here tonight, we'll try and get at least a preliminary process put together for you. But rather than you sitting here while we debate it and try and figure out how we wanna do this moving forward. I would say if the town had already agreed to sell you one lot, the only thing that's in contention here is really the value of it. And if new abutters would like to be notified, the new abutters are gonna have to be notified, everybody's gonna have to be notified that we're selling this piece of property to you, there'll have to be 2 public meetings. The additional lots will have to be another point of discussion that we have to establish a process on. Because this is kind of new information for everybody on this board, that we have the authority to sell land, so we need to have a process to do it. Your grandfathered in, kind of, because it was already agreed to be sold, but it does have to be re-notified and all that. So. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I was just trying to figure out, like, the other article the selectmen voted, like, just for Great Pond Park to sell the property for $1. That's like, how long do you think it lasts? Like the article, like they vote for something, and then how long is like, is that, this is no good anymore, that they saying that you can buy it for $1 for the abutters, you know, to add to their property. Obviously, this land I'm not just buying to keep it separate, I'm gonna add it to my lot.
Right.
You know, what I mean, so it can't be, it's all unbuildable land. It's gonna become unbuildable land if it is, you know what I mean? So I was just trying to.
What article are you looking at from here?
What year is it?
That was,
Don't guess.
So, I guess my take on it is, you went through that process under a different process. And it's not grandfathered when the town votes in a new process. The new process the town wanted, if you didn't take advantage of it by the time that this warrant article in 2012 took place, you have to follow the new process, is how I see it. It's like when you build a house, you have a building permit. If the new building code comes out and you haven't closed out that building permit, guess what? You're under the new building code. And that's how I see the sale of property if there's a new process put in place. So, to answer your question, how long a warrant article lasts? Forever, kind of, until something replaces it.
This is like 1981.
1981?
There's one above it says voted on written ballot March 10th, 1981 for a couple different things, so.
Yeah, 81, that's 40 years ago. If you think we're gonna uphold something from 40 years ago, not likely.
Should've bought it 40 years ago.
Not likely,
Yeah. Those were the tin, or the bean can ones.
yeah.
yeah, someone used to go there and vote.
Nice
for
try.
yes.
I can see the photocopy of that, and I already know which one you're pointing to. And for the record, there was one 2 years later that superseded that in '83. So those go the wayside all the time, because we just had some people in here this past winter that were trying to utilize that same one.
Right.
So,
Now, as far as the value, like I noticed, like, because I've been going through obviously looking through like a lot of town and you've been selling recently for $1. For 2 abutters. For the same thing, they extend it lot.
In other towns, you mean.
You know what I mean? What's that?
In other towns.
No, in this town.
when was that?
I don't know exactly, but they were recently.
I don't think it's been in the past 3 or 4 years. I can't tell you what the cost is gonna be. We have to have our assessor go out and look at it, and that's the procedure that we've been going off of for quite some time. So, there may have been some deal worked out that there was a lot merger or a lot line adjustment,
Well, that's-
and your property taxes will reflect that. Maybe the town decided that that's how they wanted to play it, but
Okay. So, I guess we'll see what happens.
yeah, I mean, like I say, this is new information to us, so we obviously have to have a procedure because you wanna purchase land. And there were some people right down the street from me that wanted to purchase some land. Same thing, we told them to go get a warrant article, now we have to call them up and do the same thing, so. We're not gonna sell it to anyone else on you until we get this figured out, but we're aware of your intent and we'll go from there.
And some of your neighbors might want the same pieces that you want, and then there's a bidding war,
Right?
right?
Yeah, well, I didn't know that people across the street were butters to the land, because I figured the other 2 lots I was just being butter.
just make sure you have his contact information, or?
I think I do. Did you email me about this?
No, I just called you.
Okay, well, you can call me or stop in at the office and.
All right. Yeah, when you talk to her, just make sure you give her those other parcels that you're interested in, and we'll let you know what we're gonna do.
All right. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that will open us up for first public comment. Seeing no public. Anybody on Zoom?
Oh, my one person went away.
Okay. Old business, Solar Hills, we received a complaint regarding some activity in there. There is currently a cease and desist in place on that development. Am I right in the assumption that it is on a separate piece of property that has nothing to do with that development? So.
Proposed.
Can you get to that Conant land some other way, or is it only through that road?
The road doesn't exist. So you'd have to cross over the end of phase one to get to phase two. You need a four-wheel drive vehicle to get in, that's all.
I guess why, you gotta bring me up to speed here. Is there something, obviously Pellegrino is not doing what he's supposed to do with the first, phase one,
There's,
right?
so phase one has not been completed.
Okay,
Phase two
is
will,
the Conant land in?
can't get started until phase one is completed. That was the decision of the
Or
planning board.
bond phase
Bond
two.
it.
Okay.
And there was a decision rendered on that by the planning board and the select board, I believe. So the cease and desist will remain in place until those items are addressed.
Okay.
The complaint was that he was starting,
This one here?
yeah, he was starting on phase two, which I'm led to believe by your visit,
But we didn't go in, when they came in today to speak to us, we looked right in there and the equipment hadn't moved, so it's gonna take further recon down there to see what's going on, way down onto the Conant property.
Right, 'cause he was putting in a road to get into the Conant property, correct?
I'm not sure what he's doing, so we've gotta go in straight.
Okay.
and
If
over.
he is, that's not allowed.
but it's not like graded or,
Not, well, I don't know.
okay,
So I would suggest that maybe Rich and I get out tomorrow and take a look at
okay.
what's been.
But if he's clearing trees and everything, wouldn't that be part of?
I don't think you can mandate to someone whether they can, it depends on the number of trees he's clearing, because it's
Do a cut permit?
he would have to do an intent to cut over, I think it's 24 at his town, I don't know, which is it? I think it's 24, if you're doing over 24, you need to do an intent to cut, don't quote me on that though.
We'll go down and take a look tomorrow.
Okay. Discussion of budget matters. Gonna help me with that one?
Oh, that was just because you wanted it on the agenda to, recap what took place at the budget meeting with the department heads.
Well, Dawn raised a, question, I know the other departments are the same way. I guess this year, the raises for employees and the position adjustments came out of the selectmen's budget. And so their operating budget and expenses was a separate budget. So when we talked about a 2% increase, you're gonna 2% on the operating budget, and I would assume 2%, no more than 2% on the salaries increases for next year.
Typically, what used to happen was their first budget is just their salary line as set. Once the select board decides what we're gonna do for pay for performance, all their salary lines are gonna change to accommodate that. But their salary lines out the gate, that is due not this Friday, or is it this Friday?
This Friday.
All right, it should just be their regular salary, their yearly salary right now, and project it out.
I thought we talked about a 2% all the way across and whole the line.
No, we said we didn't set it yet, we would have a discussion.
Yeah,
All right,
the reason it's with the select board, and whatever that percentage is set at, it allows the select board the flexibility to it depends on the year, I guess is how to say it best. But sometimes there are certain departments where there are more people who have higher performance, or unfortunately, as we've done in the past, there's been salary adjustments taken from the pay for performance line. And it's allowed us to do that. So whether that's the right answer or not,
That's what we historically did. The salary line,
it
the budget
allows
was-
us the flexibility to do, to be equitable in the distribution of the pay for performance, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah, well, we don't differentiate pay for performance for cost of living.
I think at this point, we have caught up. That was the consensus of the board, that we have done salary adjustments to get people where they need to be, and this year
Be
will just
competitive.
simply be a pay for performance item.
Okay.
On salary, we have some obligations that we did last year that we haven't talked about.
Correct.
for this year.
And those ones will still be taken into account, but we're not anticipating any new salary adjustments this year.
So do we wanna have Cindy prepare the
Well,
select?
we have some that we didn't pay last year that we said we were gonna do this year.
Right, those ones, is it 3 people, I believe?
Troy, Tori,
Yeah, okay, 2.
I don't know who the third one is you're talking about.
No, you're right, it's 2. I could only think of 2, but
I only know those two.
Okay.
Do we want to have Cindy prepare the selectmen's budget for next Monday, and then we can go through it line by line?
I think that would be extremely helpful, and I may have a copy of that. Because, yeah, and I don't know if that's a later item or not.
She gave a budget was just for your packet. It's got some yellow highlighting on it.
The budget she gave us was only the bank accounts.
Everybody
Yeah.
had the
Right.
bank accounts, but Phil's got something to do with the budget.
Yeah, so I talked to Cindy about, well, I guess this is a budget matter, about getting us some more reports. And I guess the board would have to determine what frequency we want to see these reports. And so she printed some stuff off. But
I was saying, talking with Phil earlier, I think we need to have a monthly budget, a status of financial condition report, basically, and where we are in the budget year to date. I think we should see that monthly. I don't know why we shouldn't see that monthly. We've got, this has been a screwy year as far as I'm concerned, to say the least. And how do I have no clue where we are.
Yeah.
no, we were getting these, and then, anyway, moving forward, I think it is
Let's go
beneficial
forward.
for us to have these on a monthly basis. And Cindy, I spoke to her about it, she would be made available, should we wanna ask questions or anything like that, she would be available to answer any questions like that. There's other things like, the ambulance billing, do
What
we
we're doing
wanna be
for
aware of-
revenue, you're saying?
Yeah, like what kind of, where we're at with that.
And she started paying those bills, for example.
Right. I say this a lot is, people aren't asked to do something, so we can't expect them to do it without us asking
Yeah,
to do it.
that's fine.
So I think if people want, and I think it is in our best interest, obviously, if we're spending money, we need to get a more up-to-date snapshot of where we are. And I think a monthly thing is a good way to start, at least until we get our feet under us and figure out what's going on with revenue.
So you wanna do like the first Monday of the month?
Well, I think in fairness to Cindy, we gotta give her a little time to compile the reports. If the bank statements go to the 30th of the month, for example, let's say, or expended, I don't know, she would know that better. So maybe the third Monday of the month. Third Monday, that gives you 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks into the month from the close of the previous month to have a report through, let's say we're at the 14th. Next week, we should have what expended in income for through August 30th. If you do the third Monday of the month, it should give her plenty of time to generate.
It doesn't, here and there,
But she
whatever,
could, whatever works for her, if it's
Right.
the second Monday or the fourth Monday,
or the first.
as long
because-
as we get on a schedule so
Right.
that we see what's coming in and out,
So I have to say, since you brought this up, maybe we should make you point person on this, so you can get with Cindy and figure out what date would work best.
Well, that's fine, I mean, I have no objections to that.
We have talked about having one daytime meeting a month,
And we did it once,
huh?
and then we had the Zoom this week, everybody liked that, but
But if we have one daytime meeting a month, that's when we should set it up to meet with her, so she's there.
Yeah, I mean, she's open to coming in the evening as well, but
But I mean, if we do one, like we've talked about, so we can talk to other department heads and other people we need to on a regular basis. I mean,
I don't think that should be contingent on one individual employee, if that's, I'd like to see us have one meeting a month during the daytime hours. I would like to see.
Yeah, I
that.
don't think it has to be with Cindy, but I think he's just saying, let's
Exactly,
get a thing. and-
exactly.
yeah.
if we need her to come in, that's the Monday to do it. If we need Rich to come in, that's the time to do it. During the daytime meeting.
But back to besides that, looking at monthly snapshot of the budget, would that be in the best interest of the select board that city prepares the selectmen's budget and we look at it, say, next week? Because they're supposed to be due anyways.
yeah, I think that the thing that I would like to see is just her notes, if there's something that's of concern to her, or, that rose to her attention, because this gets mind numbing after.
Yeah, but that's not the budget, that's just and maybe she could present it to us next week, so if we have questions, we can do that.
I'd like to see her come once a month, because there's a lot of aspects to the budget
Yeah.
that I certainly don't know, to be
Right,
honest.
so it
And
would be-
I'm sure others don't know, and I'm not looking for her the whole night.
Yeah.
I think just to make us better educated about our fiduciary responsibilities. We talk about any other problem, you're gonna see patterns, and we're gonna be able to question them if you see them every month.
Yeah.
You're gonna be more familiar with what's going on, and maybe there's some procedures that need to be changed. I have no way of knowing.
But we have to submit our budget, so why don't we do it,
We could start with that one.
start with the budget. What you're saying, a monthly meeting, I am all about that. I mean, a monthly review, that's perfect, but we do have to do our budget. And so it would be good for her to come next week.
Right, but I
And
want it
so-
before Monday. I mean, if we're gonna meet with her on Monday, I want the budget beforehand.
Well, it's supposed to be due Friday, so if it's done Friday, she can send it out, and we'll have it in email, and then if we have questions, we can ask it on Monday night, right?
Yeah?
I think, because the budget's are due Friday, so that includes hers. I'm sure she already knows what she wants to put into her budget.
Typically ours is due after everybody else does theirs, but, well, I'll get with Cindy and go over these salaries to make sure she has those right, based on what we've done.
Don, you paying by the word tonight, or
Go ahead.
you paying by the word tonight, or what?
Be very quiet. I'm taking it in.
See, you're scary when you're this quiet.
I'm waiting for it.
I'm gonna apologize.
gonna
I
drop
gotta bug out
something
at
big.
9. I gotta bug out at 9, so I'll
Okay.
apologize.
I'm taking it.
You should have told me at the beginning, I would have kept the time under. All right, so you're gonna get with Cindy then? And we'll just plan on her coming Monday to present our budget,
Yep.
so we can work through that. That'll probably be a working session though, because like you said, it's contingent on kind of what everybody else is doing, but, okay. Trunk or treat, isn't it? Or is it trick or trunk?
Trick or trunk.
Trunk or treat?
They do it every year, actually.
Yeah.
They, for the last 5 at least.
Bottom line is he's making sure that we don't have an objection to it.
He spoke to me about it. They're gonna social distance, they're gonna line them up in the
They
parking
know all
lot.
the rules.
Yeah. He's got it all.
So we wouldn't have neighborhood trick or treating, is that what we're saying?
No,
I don't
that's,
see that that's our call. I mean, to me, it's, if people don't feel comfortable with having kids come to their house and leave their light off,
this is something Paul does in conjunction.
this is
Okay,
a
this is
separate
in
thing.
addition.
He's done it.
What we normally do is specify the night for trick or treating based on, I thought you always,
Same night as,
it's always Halloween in Kingston.
by Warren Act.
It's
Yeah.
always on the 31st.
So, which happens to be a Saturday this year, so that's perfect. And it's, to me, I don't feel like it's government's job to say whether.
There's a lot of things I don't think the government should be doing, but
This is
But
one
stormwater,
This is
they
one
should
I
definitely
was-
be doing
Oh,
stormwater.
last year they canceled it, and it'll be a beautiful night. and
This, yeah, this is one I was
poor
saying.
gal.
Okay.
While we're on Paul, just one quick note,
Can we just close out the trunk or treat thing?
I don't have any objection to that.
No objection? Okay.
he came back with an update on the playground equipment, which is still gonna be a warrant article, but it was about half the price. So that was
So was
good.
it around 25,000?
It was
It was 50.
2, and now it's 27, I believe.
Okay.
And that's for the Como Field,
I still,
And what
yeah.
that's based on is the town doing a lot of the demo work, and,
It should still be a warrant article.
yeah, but it's down to 27,000, I think it was 52 before.
Did we ban fundraisers in town? I'm just curious, because that's how that playground was paid for originally.
Well, I mean, as far as
I don't know why the
I'm
town's
concerned,
responsible for
donation.
replacing something.
well, I think this is what you do, you put it on the warrant, if it fails, and then they gotta come up with another alternative.
Right, then they could do the fundraising if they want to do it.
It's just gotta be, the warrant article's gotta be worded right, not that, so if it fails, it doesn't say they can't do the playground, it says they can't fund it. Which is
Oh,
what the
it's-
school board did one year, is they,
Screwed it up.
purchased a truck and it failed to be funded, and then they bought it anyway with other fundings, and everybody said, we said no to the truck, not to the funding. So that's what we have to be careful on the playground equipment, but I'll talk to Paul about that.
Okay. Committee liaison reports.
For the fire department, I sent out, there was an emergency purchase for that turbo for the engine 2. I haven't got an update on it, but they had to do, there was none local, they had to do a worldwide search, and that's why he needed approval before we did that. But as we all stated, it was a emergency purchase, I mean, it's a frontline piece of equipment, so.
For the new fire station, we're looking at a payment process, working with Cindy, Graham, and I. Board wanted me to find some way to expedite the payment, and so we'll have a process and bring it to the board for their approval.
Elections went real well this week. I have to give Tammy and Ellen kudos for organizing a well-run structure, and thanks also to Rich and his department, because they helped a lot in the setup of the room so that we had the equal distancing and so forth. I thought it went extremely well and were very well planned out.
Tremendous amount of compliments from people coming through.
Exactly,
And how
quite a few.
protected they felt, and
Yeah.
Yeah, they felt safe, they felt comfortable, and it went. We're gonna have a lot more people, 3 times the people.
and we had a record number of people the other day for.
We had
for a primary.
28% voter turnout for a primary. We've never had that, never. Usually we have about 600 people vote, 30 to 50 absentees. We had over 400 absentees, and I think it was 1,407 people voted. So it's quite an accomplishment.
I'm gonna bug out, when you go to the minutes, I gave him one correction. The minutes.
We got 3 more minutes. All right, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I missed the inspectors meeting last week, so I have nothing to report. Anything else for committee liaison?
Most, inspectors meetings every other Thursday
Yeah.
at 8.
Yep. Okay, public comment number 2.
Anything, Susan?
Okay. I'm not gonna read this whole thing. I'm gonna send it around. This is from the library. It's basically a, do you wanna just explain it?
I think they just want to, they've submitted reimbursement requests on this current round of Go for a Grant, which went out today, and they have a certain amount of expenditures they would like reimbursed reimbursement for. They just want to make sure that they get that money if it is accepted by the state as eligible, because right now, there's a lot more stuff put on there because they said they would accept salaries. We get all those salaries, we're gonna go way over our limit, and they just wanna make sure that their little piece of it gets paid to them.
Well, if and when it comes in, we can reallocate it at that point, their little piece of it,
Yeah.
okay? We don't need to read the letter.
Town of Hooksett apparently is in a butter to us. They are putting up a wireless facility.
Hooksett?
Yeah, within so many miles.
Okay.
We have an abutter notice for 266 Route 125, notifying us of their planning board hearing on the 29th of September.
That's Hooksett still?
No, that's 266 Route 125. Sears Logistics
Okay.
property. So the total service-connected disability, he doesn't have the paperwork, or he does?
He came back with the same paperwork, and I said, what we're looking for is your annual, right, your annual, report from the VA, or the letter saying what your status is, and he said he doesn't have that yet because he just got the total disability. He'll get that letter in January, he estimates, so I said, when you get that letter, he would get a copy to us. The paperwork he does have does say the words, but it's just not that annual report that you're looking for.
And the DRA felt the same way, right? So
They
that guy's
felt they
email in there.
needed that exact, that they would be looking for that phrase. So it's put in a different way on the paperwork he gave us, but it's like, it all adds up to this, but it doesn't say this is your status,
Yeah.
right? You know, so he can't get it until next year anyway, so I can hold on to it and just let him know we're holding on to it until he gets his letter.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the DRA is of the same mind, then,
Yeah,
We should
they
see
like to
that.
see that letter.
yeah. I don't see the resident looking for a lemonade stand one.
Oh, they just came in today and asked the question, but
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
they can have it.
Well, I've seen it in my
Send them to
neighborhood.
planning board. Let them determine.
With a site plan review request.
And what's the stormwater impact of the lemonade stand is the first thing we need to assess here.
I didn't think
Sure,
anything
they
was
should
being
have-
right, but I said.
And do we need any code enforcement issues?
No,
You can do
no
that.
live bands.
I've seen it some, on Rock River even, I've seen some kids here. There's
I
nothing
didn't think
wrong
there
with
was
the
anything, or even,
God love them.
yeah, garage sales are the same, aren't
They
they? It's
make
just
more
a
money
one-time.
selling margaritas, but that's another story. Email for Block 5, is that what
Yeah, that's something that should probably be discussed.
With the email from Block 5? As
Just
we had,
basically
I didn't see an email from Block 5.
It was from me.
It was from you?
So we did
Oh,
meet,
that was waiting here at the desk for us, okay?
we did meet, have the meeting. It was very successful. There were a number of issues found. And he will have something for us very soon.
Okay, then that should go in the next meeting then. So we can keep talking about it.
There's one issue of great concern that we discussed.
I'm sure there's a lot of issues. Yeah, the next one is that memo from Glenn Greenwood on the Class 6 roads. The ZBA, much to your surprise, denied the request to get a building permit on a Class 5 road.
What was it, a full moon?
We say no sometimes, shame on
I
you.
thought that was always,
Excuse me?
isn't a class 6 road always denied usually?
They can always go to the zoning board and get an exception.
Okay.
It technically, it's a state regulation, that was the issue. And we didn't have a specific one locally.
But you can get a permit on a class 6.
If you get a variance from the ZBA, you could technically, but the ZBA did not do that. And there were a number of abutters there as well in attendance at the meeting. Although only one or two spoke, they weren't. Anyways,
I think Glenn wanted me to bring that to the selectmen also because there's a phrase in there about what the Board of Selectmen can grant, or I think they can say you can, I don't know, they can give permission of some sort. He's not recommending it, but he just wanted you to be aware that is,
For a class 6?
yeah, that the request may come to you, he just wants to make you aware.
Well, we'll leave that in the applicant's hand. This tax deed item probably needs to be discussed in non-public, yes?
I would say.
So the Oak Street thing, Rich
what
is
we're
looking into that?
Rich's taking care of it.
Sounds like they just reversed the sign.
Yeah. Well, my street was changed and now I'm not getting any deliveries.
Is that the tax deed on the property we spoke of, the 125?
Yep.
I'll give you a little information on that.
All right, that's everything.
Minutes?
move to accept as printed.
I have a correction.
Okay.
Up at the top, it says absent Richard Wilson. Down at motion to seal minutes, seconded by Selectman Wilson. About the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th paragraph, 7th paragraph.
What page are we on?
Motion to seal minutes made by Alessio, seconded by Selectman Wilson.
Move that we accept them as corrected.
Second.
A motion and a second, roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yep.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
And Wilson?
No. Abstain.
Oh, my God.
Okay,
Motion for non-public.
motion,
Second?
roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Leo, Briggs?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, that will conclude the televised portion of this evening's meeting. Thank you very much for joining us.
I forgot to bring you the file folders for the notices.